One of Scotland's most famous routes is that from Fort William to Mallaig in the Western Highlands. It was comparatively recently built, opening in the early part of this century, and it opened up one of the most beautiful parts of the country to tourists.
The Fort William to Mallaig line is still considered to be one of the most beautiful railways in the country, and its steam service, the Jacobite, which was set up by ScotRail back in 1984, gained popularity with the Harry Potter franchise. But the reason for my journey is to discover Britain's romantic railway. When I say romantic, I don't mean Disney princesses meeting Prince Charmings. I mean it in the sense of the romantic movement that emerged in the late 18th century and flourished into the Victorian era. The Grand Gateway of Fort William Station, along with about a kilometre or so of the line, was demolished to make way for improvements to the A84 bypass, and the replacement station, built in the 70s, reflects a more functional design style of the period. The private company running the Jacobite steam service decided not to follow recent legislation to ensure locking doors for health and safety reasons, instead hanging out for an exemption. They didn't get it, and have forced to cancel services until the work is done. But as much as the smell of coal and the sounds of the steam engine does summon up nostalgic feelings, which are part of the romance of rail travel, it comes with a hefty ticket price of £65, whereas the scheduled service is £15 return. The Romantic movement was big on nostalgia, but it had quite a different meaning to the sense of loss, or the mourning of a past that probably never existed. And it's something I want to explore on this journey, as well as my intellectual journey as I explore the Romantic movement. The Mallaig line is an appropriate place to start my quest, as it was completed in the last year of Queen Victoria's reign of 1901, and it was the turning point when many of the romantic ideals that were reflected in the art, the fashion, design and architecture came to an end, as a gritty realism and modernism became more prominent. Romanticism was a movement that emerged across Europe in the late 18th century, and much of that seems to stem from the experience of the wealthy and the artistic going on the Grand Tour to experience the classical civilization of Rome and view the great art and architecture of Italy. Part of that journey involved crossing the Alps and over the treacherous St. Bernard's Pass. And for 200 years or so, the Alps were an obstacle, and then around 1780, people stopped and looked on in awe at the landscape. The poet William Wordsworth in 1790, crossing the Simplon Pass, had an awakening. He later recalls a pivotal moment of his youth 15 years later in the Prelude Book 4, and described the landscape in vivid details, painting a picture of the sights, sounds, and sensations he experienced, and the connection he felt with nature, and how it evoked deep emotions. Wordsworth, along with other writers and artists across Europe, connected with people, and it made Wordsworth a superstar. His fans also discovered nature. For centuries, the countryside and the wilderness were to be avoided, far better the bright lights of the city. Artists and poets were the heroic explorers venturing into an uncharted realm of the human psyche, and the natural world guided by intuition and inspiration rather than cold logic, and it was a release from the strict social conservatism which was the norm. The Romantic movement was not entirely a response to the age of enlightenment of science and invention. Certainly, as that revolution of ideas morphed into coal-powered industrialization, the countryside became a retreat, but rather romance and enlightenment were different sides of the same coin. Both revelled in exploration and discovery. The first response to this movement, or craze if you will, was to simply import the architecture and designs of the Alps, hence little alpine cottages surrounded by rock gardens, began to appear in country estates. And this architectural style continued throughout the 19th century, and here in Scotland, railway stations blend alpine styles with gothic, and the fusion of styles known as baronial. And just as artists and poets could be bold explorers of the sublime, so could anyone by jumping onto a train and venture out on their own journey of self-discovery through this rugged landscape. This iconic bridge was built by the Scottish engineer, concrete Bob McAlpine. Initially, the builders of the West Highland Line, Lucas and Aird, were to continue the line to Mallaig, but delays as politicians argued over the subsidies for this line interfered with their construction schedule, and so McAlpine took over. The local stone, a schist, is not suitable for this kind of structure, so that's why they use concrete. It's the longest concrete bridge in Scotland. Loch Shiel stretches out beyond Glenfinnan Monument, which used to be the attraction here, before the Harry Potter franchise made the bridge famous. And the monument was built in 1814 to commemorate the Jacobite Highlanders who fought against the English House of Hanover. The romantic understanding of nostalgia was one about looking to the past, to a simpler time of living in a pastoral idyll, or a more heroic age of knights and quest. But it was also the feeling of connection. Put it this way, I didn't grow up with steam. My first train memories are ones of diesel, but the smell of coal, the smoke, the shrill of the whistle, the noise and movement of the train pulling away, and I feel like I'm connecting with something warm and fuzzy in the past. Now that feeling, that emotion is called déjà vu, which translates as familiarity. And like the terms for romantic and nostalgic, it too has changed its meaning to the more general sense of having lived through a moment before. There is something about rail travel, and I don't mean the miseries of a commute, but rail travel that summons up the emotions of romance, nostalgia, and déjà vu. The rhythmic motions of a train creates a sensory experience that complements the sights, sounds, smells, and even tactile sensations. These sensory immersions intensify the emotional and the intellectual response to nature's grandeur. It's called a hypnagogic state. It's that point between wakefulness and sleep, a dreamlike state. And another benefit of rail travel over road travel is the journey is smooth. There are no wild bends or rapid braking to wake you from this trance. And Britain's alpine light railways offer views. Not the road ahead as you get in a car, but almost a gallery of changing scenery and weather. Roads with their winding routes and undulating gradient navigate the terrain in a direct and more rugged manner. Rail, in contrast, despite being industrial infrastructure, gracefully embraces the contours of the land. It seeks the most gentle of inclines and curves and opts for a more harmonious route than the most expedient. No, I'm not religious, and I don't like the word spiritual, given it comes with its own baggage. But I do seek those emotions, encompassed in those three misused words of nostalgia, déjà vu, and the sublime. I see transcendence. And likewise, I'm averse to use the religious and spiritual metaphors such as the place of that experience, whether it's a church or a temple, or prayer or an incantation. How do I describe a train journey as a place and a means of enlightenment? Sure, the Victorians were wont to turn their biggest train stations into cathedrals of the modern age. And the terminals like the original station at Fort William are like gateways, a baronial portal to an exciting journey or quest. Just as the Romantics hark back to an age of Arthur and romance and the past, I'm using the act of travel, and in particular the rail network, as a grail quest. Over the course of these romantic railway episodes, I'm looking to experience the sublime to be moved, not only by the rail, but by the scenery and the experience, as well as explore the ideas of the romantic movement and its relevance to the present. With the trip terminating in Mallaig, there are a number of choices. There are the beaches nearby that have the most stunning sunsets. The beaches are aesthetic, beautiful white sands with views of muck, rum and egg. And the magical gloaming was used in the 1980s classic film, Local Hero. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do comment, like and subscribe.